All right. Hello, everyone. Just want to say welcome to our visitors and to our speakers today. Do just want to say real quick, Commissioner Dreith will not be with us. He just had an eye procedure, so our thoughts and prayers are with him. Vice Chairwoman Mayor will not be with us. Her cat had to be taken to the vet for a emergency. I believe had something to do with a broken pelvis. And Jessica Schneider will be in and out because she has some family over that she was not expecting. Oh, it looks like she's on there. So she might come in and out, she might not. With that, I want to go ahead and take attendance. So if you hear your name, please just say here, present, raise a hand. You know the drill. Catherine Barrett. Here. Aaron Black. Here. Catherine Bullard. You see. Johnny Drake. Here. You. And we know about Gary. Tara Hildebrand. Here. Lori Ward. Here. We know about Sarah. Jordan Pryor here. Mike Scholl. Is he on Zoom? I'll put a little question mark by him for now. Okay. Jessica Schneider, I see her name up there. Here. Ron Stoddard. Present. Making sure not to forget you. Patty Swiger. Here. Merlin Thompson. Yeah. Jane Big. Here. I like the enthusiasm. And Natalie Walsh. Excellent. Okay. So with that, I'm going to just do a quick agenda review, just briefly tell you guys what we're going to be doing today. So we will have a subcommittee update, just a brief 10 minutes to talk about what the four of us spoke about with Nicole Yost and the Let's Talk Loveland project. We are going to receive a presentation from LPD regarding the co-responder program. We're going to receive a presentation from Thompson Valley EMS regarding CARES. And then at the end, if we have time, we will plan for our April 18th meeting and hopefully figure out our presentation stuff for our next report to council. So with that, I am going to move to the approval of minutes. Is there any changes anybody has? There's Mike. Thank you, Patty. Does anybody have any changes to the minutes from last meeting? Going once, going twice. All right. Well, then I move that we approve the minutes from last meeting. All right. Meeting minutes have been approved. And with that, we move on to public comment. So if there is anyone in here today who has public comment, please make your way to the front.
I got voted up first. Hi, I'm Bob Massaro, Loveland. I hadn't planned on testifying tonight, so this will be pretty quick, guys. Last week, yes, it was last week that the city had the honor of going up to Fort Collins for a hearing. As a result of that hearing, the judge was very specific in what he said. He was only talking about what the city did as far as satisfying a core request, not anything to do with the content. And I'm not going to repeat what his term was. I think everybody's heard it. And if you got on Facebook, you saw many indications of what that term was. What I'm here for tonight is really, we teach our kids to be accountable for what they do. The content of those messages, the text messages, I don't think it's a stretch to say violated the Open Records Act, because there were at least three people on some of those text messages. There's also an email that's a couple of years old now that went to 5 council members on private email. So no one would see those on a core request. Also talking city council business. This is the Trust Commission. And why I'm here tonight is I believe this is the place that this needs to be talked about. Because if we don't have some accountability on what's happening, then why do we have rules at all? Just throw them away. And that seems to be what's happening. I think I'm tilting at windmills here, but I will say it anyway. We have counselors that have violated that rule, in my belief, I'm not a lawyer, But the law states clearly if 3 or more people meet, that's considered a meeting. Text messages and emails are considered meetings according to the write-up. And yet there's no accountability. Nothing's been done. And if we don't do something, what's the future? What are we teaching our kids? What are we teaching everybody in this community? And what does it show this community for the rest of the state and the country for that matter? So my point here is, I believe this commission should put together something. I know you guys are busy. I really appreciate that. But at some point in your final report, there should be something along that line of what it takes to get accountability for the city council, because they're self-disciplined. And unless somebody calls it out, nothing is going to happen here, okay? So that's my wish, that you guys can put something together to say that this is a violation and it needs to be addressed somehow. Whether that's censure or something else, that's up to you, all right? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Massaro. Yes, Natalie? Will you, microphone? Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. This is Commissioner Walsh. Do you know if there's a transcript or a recording of the court hearing? One of the things that, we're doing is, we're collecting as much information as we can so that we have something to base our opinion on other than, rumor and Facebook. So I was wondering if you knew if there was a transcript or if anyone.
I would assume there is, but I think I would defer to our counsel here as to whether or not there's a transcript. That I assume every court has a transcript. I know there's a stenographer there taking notes, so I assume it's there.
Thanks. Well, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Bill Jensen. I live in Loveland. So following up on what Rob said, I do have an excerpt here from the Reporter Herald last Wednesday. And this is in response to the Tuesday hearing. An 8th Judicial District Court judge ruled Tuesday morning that the city of Loveland did not act in good faith in filing a petition in early March regarding Mayor Jackie Marsh's Cora request into messages between Don Overcash and a city employee. Because of this, Judge Juan Villaseñor ruled the city will have to pay costs and attorney fees for the time it's spent in the courtroom. Villaseñor also commented on corruption issues he saw in the city's handling of this situation, comparing it to cases regarding banana republics in the early 1900s. Those are just like the first few words of a news article that appeared last week, Wednesday. So Rob was also talking about public meetings with 3 or more counselors. So personally, I submitted 2 Cora requests regarding 2 meetings. Each meeting had 3 counselors present with the city manager also. So there was a Cora request for each meeting. The city simply replied that responsive documents don't exist. So naturally, I requested minutes simply to illuminate that a meeting did exist. And because there were no minutes, I would just like the commission to know that city councilors do conduct dark meetings. And that's my comment.
Thank you. Is there any more public comment? I feel like everyone over here is part of the presentation. So with that, do we have any phone in comment?
Mr. Fryer, if you'd like to speak to public comment, please press *9 on your phone or choose the raise your hand feature. And caller with the phone number ending in 3341, if you can accept the request to unmute or press *6 on your phone. And caller, thank you, you're unmuted.
Hi, this is Amanda Waddell, resident of Loveland. And I won't say anything about the court case from last week, but instead I just want to address what I believe is a big issue with trust in this city. I've had the good fortune of talking with former and current city employees, especially a lot over the last, few months. In the court case, we saw how certain city employees are treated as confidants and friends and all of that. But I think that is a very small number of people. The bulk of what I am talking with current and former city employees is a lot of concern for ethics, for morality, for pay, for employee retention, for diversity, for equity, for inclusion. Their needs are not addressed, and they are afraid of repercussions when needs are expressed or when opinions are expressed. Just recently, I was able to read a letter, an exit letter from an employee that left in December, and the letter was sent to Steve Adams and copied, several other people in city leadership were not on council, but in other leadership positions were copied. But so far, this person wishes to remain anonymous, but has not received any sort of answer, any sort of explanation. And the letter was so well written and hit on a lot of concerns that seem to be a theme. But one little piece, in case you haven't read it already, one little piece that I want to share is that seems to be, one of those themes through a lot of the city employment, is that there are two key factors contributing to this turnover and positions going unfulfilled: non-competitive salaries and the political environment in Loveland. Salaries in Loveland are far lower than that in peer cities, which also tend to have far better benefits. From a personal perspective, my starting salary in Longmont will be $12,000 more annually than I'm making in Loveland for a similar senior position. Additionally, the benefits are far better, with substantially lower employee contributions for medical benefit plans with better coverage. Additionally, potential candidates in the region are very likely turned off by an increasingly dysfunctional city council. So this letter, if you haven't had a chance to read it, I can ask if I can share it with the Trust Commission in entirety if you want.
Ms. Waddell, your 3 minutes have expired, but yes, if you do have something to send, please forward that over to our CTC facilitator email. And it should be in the agenda packet, correct? The email?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure. Thank you. And then do we have any more phone in comment?
I do not see much.
Okay. And then we don't have any email comment to my knowledge, at least nothing that was submitted on time. We do have something for next week. Yes, Jessica?
Thank you, Chair Pryor. I do know, I think, didn't Ray Ann Garrett send some email comment to the CTC? Was that not meant for public comment or?
Jeffrey's going to double check on that. I don't remember seeing anything personally, but she did. Okay, then we'll get that pulled up in just a second.
Great, so it can be read.
All of the texts.
Thank you.
She didn't ask us to read it, but I would encourage everybody to read it.
I'll, just for the fairness of reading it out loud, I'll do my best in a 3-minute period if Jeffrey gets it pulled up here in a second.
She said for public comment.
What is it?
The attachments that were on our packet. Well, it's every single text, every single comment, every single.
Yeah, we won't be able to get through all of that, but I can at least read what the email says. Yeah.
There are really 2 points that, you know, we could just go over.
Can we restate that when it's for public comment, that we need to say, because I think that's what.
Okay. So I think the issue was the subject line did say for public comment, but as a just in case, email says, good afternoon, everyone. As I am sure some of you are aware about the court case with Mayor Marsh and the city, I hope you take the time to look into this. When an honorable judge states our city is functioning like a banana republic, and it is corrupt, that is something that needs to be addressed and people need to be held accountable. Not one apology from the people involved, not one. Please see the attached files for the entire text to include colluding with each other to campaign against the mayor, using the city time for overcash to involve the city staff with this mayoral campaign, just to name a few. Please see the Reporter Herald story here. And then these attachments will be a part of the agenda. Now on to more pressing news. When the chair of our planning commission board/committee, Ron Weinberg, has this kind of write up against him and nothing is done as far as I know, this is also a serious problem. It is because when these kinds of nefarious acts occur and there is no accountability, mistrust is within our city. And then thank you for your time. And there were several attachments. So the attachments will be in the packet. So sorry if that felt like a coded message.
Appreciate that.
All right, if there are no more email or phone in comment, that will take us to our next agenda item, which I'm pulling back up on my phone. So we will have a update on the Let's Talk Loveland efforts from the subcommittee. And since I'm not going to ask Sarah to speak on this just because, yeah. Oh, you want to do it? Sure. Go for it.
This is Commissioner Barrett, and I would appreciate very much if you chime in for things that I missed.
Yes.
But essentially, we met with Nicole Yost, and she was amazing. We had about an hour meeting before to try to figure out what the commission's objectives would be with a page on Let's Talk Loveland. And we presented several things, and she came back with, yes, basically we could do everything you want. She sent out an email that should be in the commission packet as well.
I have it pulled up if you need it.
Okay, I have it here.
Okay.
But basically she said that she wants us to come up with language for and a photo to be used on the page. And I submitted a paragraph, which I guess most people liked and some people had some input for it. So maybe if we could take some time at some point tonight, perhaps, to take a look at that and maybe get that to her, that would be helpful. And then we also need to schedule a time when we can all meet at Lake Loveland and take our pretty pictures. She's going to have a list of engagement contact, including links to all the commission meetings, links to past meetings and agenda, upcoming events, timeline widget to show the Trust Commission journey, adding documents for important call out documents such as core values and ordinance, use the news feature to consider Trust Commission short bios and intros. What I think is really important, use the question feature ongoing, and that we came up with what's on your mind and how can we help, just to give citizens of Loveland a voice. And finding out who's listening, or there's a who's listening section, then that would be Nicole and perhaps another General Trust Commission entry using our email, I would imagine. And then the sign up banner. So our deliverables to her are really just that paragraph and a picture.
And there is a little bit of time etched out at the end of this meeting for us to talk about that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, I think you covered everything. It was we only had about an hour with Nicole. So, there was only so much that we were able to go through, especially with having to, she'd pull up stuff, show us features and all of that. But once we can get those deliverables to her, she'll be able to get our profile up and running. And hopefully from there, we'll be able to get a little bit more community input. Who does? Yes, Jonna.
I thought we had a great meeting and it was very productive.
I love the positive attitude. Thank you. All right, Jonna, Catherine, is that all from you two? Okay. Perfect. Then with that, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next agenda item, which will be a presentation from Lieutenant Pyle, correct? Okay, perfect. Lieutenant Pyle with LPD about the co-responder program.
Well, we'll be very close for this. Hello, I'm Lieutenant Pyle with the Loveland Police Department. I am the Special Operations Lieutenant at the Police Department. Spent 3 years in patrol with my friend here, Jesse. I'll let him introduce, but Jesse Boyd and I work very closely in patrol. And our presentation is going to bring to you the co-responders program that was started in 2016. We'll take you through that, and then we'll have questions at the end we can take and answer those for you. So it's very important that you understand our program and see how it works. So
quick. And unless you guys have a clarifying question, please hold questions to the end. Thank you.
Hi, folks. My name is Jesse Boyd. I'm the clinical team lead for our co-responder program. I appreciate you all having us here today. And like Lieutenant Pyle said, we'll do our best to give you a good overview of what we've been doing since 2016 with the Loveland Police Department. So I'm employed by Summit Stone Health Partners. It's our local community mental health center and embedded out of the police department. I've been there since about 2016, just a month or two after the program's inception. So I've been there watching the program adapt, helping, working with all the officers and our program liaisons to try to figure out a good way we can help the community. So I appreciate y'all letting us be here today.
So when he says he works with patrol, they have an office in our patrol room. So the sergeants are in there, the lieutenants are in there with patrol, and they're in there. They have radios where they monitor the calls that come across. They have access to the call screen to see what's coming up. So they're getting their information in real time. And when Jesse says 2016, he's been here since the beginning. Captain Tim Brown was here at that time. If any of you know Tim, he was the front setter for this whole program throughout the county. First in the county to bring on co-responders. Tim was a psychologist within our police department, and he saw the need and the increase in mental health calls. And frankly, to be honest with you, most of our calls are mental health related to whether it's somebody going through a crisis or somebody having a health issue with it. No. Tim saw that, brought on the co-responders, and that's where the program started. And we started with just Jesse. So as of today, we're up to 4. And we probably could use another 40. I'll be honest with you. So that's the history of it. As we started in 2016, we were the first to launch the co-responder program. And then it went on from there.
Yeah, and so like Lieutenant Pyle mentioned, I was the mobile unit, the mobile team down here. We started out as an extension of our behavioral health urgent care, which is up in Fort Collins. And so I was providing both support, mobile crisis intervention for the Loveland Police Department, as well as for the community in general. And so we were able to get grant funding through tedious documentation and data collection on what we were doing. Handwritten, it was a ton of fun. And to be able to get some grant funding. And so Larimer Interagency Network of Co-Responders, LINK, was established at that point. We've been growing ever since. We have branched out to have Larimer County Sheriff's Office. They have 3 different co-responders who are embedded and ride with deputies. And we have now a total of 4 through the Loveland Police Department. We've worked with Thompson Valley EMS. We have been able to provide support on any sort of medical calls that they might have come up that have a behavioral health component. We have somebody with Estes Park who's been here, I think 4 years or so out of their department as well, and have really been able to establish some additional needs and meet those needs with support through the police department, with Summit Stone, with the city. We were able to get a case manager to help us be able to meet practical needs within our community, help people get unmedicated, help them get on food stamps, help them get access to dog food with sunglasses, whatever it might be, glasses, whatever it might be. And a peer specialist as well, who can really use their own life experience to meet people where they're at and help to normalize the struggles that we all go through as people.
Yeah, I'll say this. So just to understand what our program is, a lot of people interpret the co-responder as just that incident-based response, right? We get a call, we respond, the co-responders respond with us, and we take care of it. Our program goes well beyond that. It's aftercare, it's follow up with these people, making sure they get the resources and stuff. And that's really where a lot of the work comes in. And it's following up on those shifts that don't have somebody. Our program is a secondary program. The mental health clinician arrives independently. They have their own car. They listen to the radio. They come on the scene once the scene's secure. They talk to the people. They provide them. Once it's safe, we kind of exit out the back door and leave and let them handle it once they feel secure in the situation. The primary response, like the sheriff's department, uses those deputies that are trained in that ride specifically with the co-responders. And the reason theirs is different is because you got to think about the rural county, right? So having them respond from the station to come up to Red Feather is going to be a bigger challenge, or different parts of the county where response could be 2 hours when it needs to be more immediate. So their program is a primary, and then the community paramedics team, Chief Lesher's here, and he can talk to you about how the Thompson Valley embedded this into their program and how they work from there. Our program, they have their own office. They monitor it. They respond at our requests. They follow up at our requests. Right now, they're not working midnight shift, and I can't convince them of that. So in the morning, they'll come in and there'll be emails from the officers throughout the night. We contacted this person. They could use your services. We talked to them. They follow up with them that way too. And some things that come up aren't response by police, right? They're not really a criminal in nature or safety in nature. And they take those on their own and respond to those needs as well. And there's a lot of needs out there. But those are the 3 co-responders models we have right now. Loveland Police Department, we have 4. And we're a secondary program. Larimer County has 3 co-responders that ride with their deputies, or a primary program. Estes Park is 1, and then the case manager and peer specialist. You can talk about those.
Yeah, sure. And so we are lucky enough, we have a couple of my teammates here tonight. We have our manager, Susanna West, and one of our new co-responders, Jessica Bricky, who was able to be hired through the city funds that were recently provided. So we're very lucky and happy to have them here. So yeah, the secondary dispatch model that we have, I really appreciate the model and the function. We have the opportunity, we have our own van, like Lieutenant Powell mentioned. It has a T barrier, so we can provide safety for folks. They don't have to be in the back of a cop car handcuffed if we're trying to transport them to the hospital for further evaluation. So we're able to help to get people around the community safely. And we get the opportunity to work with all of the officers. Anyone that has overlap on our shift, we get the opportunity to work with them. And I think that's really been helpful for us. We have the opportunity to do psychoeducation with everybody. We consult, we have good relationships. And that's been one of the biggest things for us to be able to really establish this program well. So that's up here on the picture. You've got me, my other coworker, Sue Jones, who's been here for a couple of years now. Amazing resource. And then Jessica, our new co-responder.
She's got pictures, so we had to bring her.
Yeah. I was talking about a cardboard cutout, but that felt awkward. So, and so we are, at this point, we're working on Monday through Wednesday, every other weekend. My coworkers Wednesday through Friday, every other weekend. So we have 7-day coverage. Like I mentioned, I'm the team lead, so I have some other admin duties that take me out of the field periodically, but for the most part, we've got 7-day coverage, 9, and now with Jessica and our new co-responder who'll be onboarding in the next couple of weeks, we'll have 9 to about midnight coverage, which is pretty good. Really looking forward to it. Yeah, you were able to convince us with the midnight a little bit there, right?
I couldn't believe it. It's hard to hire people like this, okay? Because it's such a stressful job, much like law enforcement, which is why we've mingled so close together. And this relationship we built with Jesse and his team has been appreciated on both sides. There's no conflict. The police officers love this relationship. They love this resource. 2 years ago, the officers voted for him for the Professional Staff Employee of the Year. And we don't even pay him because Summit Stone does. So that's pretty good, for that. It's something that we all want to move forward with, and it's the changing law enforcement times. We're dealing with a lot more mental health issues now than we did 3 years ago or prior to COVID. So it is a team effort. We're appreciative of that. We also hope he never leaves us, or we won't allow him to for it. But here's our goals as the program as we move forward.
And the reason I wear this is so y'all can't see me blushing. Yeah. And yeah, thank you, Lieutenant Pyle. And that's, the thing is, it really is the relationship with the officers, gaining trust, understanding each other, being able to work seamlessly in the field is important when you're in a crisis situation. We have had folks that have come and gone, and so it really is helpful. But it's hard to find the right folks, and luckily enough, we have. And we're excited to continue expanding it out. So I mean, some of the things we've been working on throughout, since 2016. One of the main things is unnecessary use of emergency services, whether that's unnecessarily going to the emergency department, to jail, having unnecessary contact with law enforcement over time, continuously calling into dispatch with significant distress that might have an underlying behavioral health component. So our job, and officers do an amazing job of this, they are able to help identify, hey, maybe there's something else going on here. Let's see if we can get one of our mental health units involved, provide some support. And it's not always this solid mental health diagnosis. It could be just distress. I mean, a crisis is subjective, right? Distress is subjective. If you come into contact with law enforcement, you might not be having the best day. And so when people are struggling, we want to meet them there, talk to them, try to provide some support, try to help with de-escalation, try to help with brief crisis interventions. And, we do our best to meet them in the field. It's that part of that least restrictive treatment setting that's up there. We don't need them necessarily we don't want to try to haul them to an office right away. Meeting them in their home can be really powerful. And so our ability to do that has been really helpful in supporting folks. One of the things we also try to do, so that emergency department diversion, it's a big thing we track. In the past, it was easy. You recognize there's some safety concerns. You recognize there's some mental health concerns. You might want to bring them to the emergency room. They're inundated, and it's not always the best place for folks. So when we are able to intervene, we have the same licensure that the assessment teams at the hospital do. We're able to intervene in the field, avoid that extra step, avoid that extra stress, and provide that assessment and crisis intervention in the field with folks. One of the big things we work on, which I'm really make a concerted effort for, is to relieve law enforcement, go back to doing what they do best. They do a great job. Some of my favorite interventions are tag teaming with officers. Sitting down, we'll work together to provide some support. And it's really surprising, having gone to school for this, the amount of techniques that officers just naturally use to be able to help folks. So those are some of my favorite.
Yeah, I think the other part is he's a resource for us, right? So if he's recognizing certain behaviors in a call that may be indicative of a mental health issue, he will call the officer and say, hey, this might be what you're approaching. This might be what you need to start thinking about. I'm heading your way. Or he can say, I have a history with this person. I know what they're going through, and I have a relationship built with them. He might also say, I don't have a relationship built with them. They're not happy. So let's try and find another alternative for them. The resource and that information prior to us even showing up is extremely helpful. Or the behaviors that may have the best approach, right? Don't approach approach with your name, approach cautiously, things like that. He's there. He's en route. He's coming. What happens 90% of the time is this communication is going on before the officer even shows up. The officer shows up, talks to him, determines it's not critical. Jesse's right there, comes in, asks Jesse, are you comfortable with him? Yep. Are you comfortable talking to Jesse? Yep. Okay, you guys work it out. Let us know if you need anything. And then we're out the door and we're both doing reports and he's taking care of it. Then he does his follow up the days later to make sure that they get what they want. Truly full service. And it's beneficial for both sides of us and for it. So any of the other goals?
No, I mean, that's the thing. We do our best to get law enforcement back in the field. If it's not safe for us to head out, officers can stay there. We do our own safety screening. Officers will do theirs as well. And if there's no concerns, they'll head out and we'll stick around with the person, provide more in-depth assessment, more in-depth support, figure out a little bit about what's going on and maybe give them some tools to be able to deal with it a little bit better. Avoid that continued contact with law enforcement if there was a behavioral health concern or distress that contributed to it.
Yeah, I think in the history, and I've been here, well, not here, but law enforcement 28 years, we would recognize a mental health issue, take them into custody, take them to the hospital, drop them off, right? Somebody would say, I think I want to kill myself. We're like, okay, well, there's the green light. Let's go, right? And some of those would result in fights or medication or things like that, which didn't put us in the right position and it wasn't beneficial. In the last 5 years, we've taken a better look at mental health care and recognizing it instead of doing it to get cooperation and self-help because of that, right? And it's tough. It's an emotional, you do that without these resources from this team, and we're guessing a lot of the time. We can go to an 80-hour school and learn how to talk to them, but every situation is different. I'll be honest. So this is the future of law enforcement, and it will continue to grow as we go.
Yeah, and so, we've already touched on several of these items here, but this is what we do. We do our best to provide a full, well-rounded assessment when we're out in the field. So we'll try to help with de-escalation in the moment. Well, if there's some indication of concern for safety for other folks, that's when officers will make sure it's safe before we head on the scene, but we're often going and knocking on the doors with them. So we can help with de-escalation. We'll do risk assessments. One of our biggest things. We want to make sure people are safe, both for self and others. So we do a full risk assessment. And if there's concerns, we'll make a safety plan. I've spent hours in the field for really complicated situations, trying to wrap in support systems, make sure we've got a good plan to keep folks safe and keep them out of the hospital if they don't need to be there. So we'll spend a significant amount of time doing that. I'll try to identify, again, some of the areas of distress they might have and give them some tools so that they can figure it out and keep moving forward.
They also help with our training. Last month, we did in-service training. Officers trained every month on different subjects. And last month was arrest control, which is your ground fighting and things like that. And at the end of it, we did a tabletop to discuss mental health reactions, approaches, and things like that, and get the questions from the officers of what we can and can't do. Thompson Valley helped us with that. They came in and talked to us for that. It's really a team effort for that. We're appreciative to them. And also for Summit Stone for doing it. So it's resources we use constantly for it.
And we're a part of pre-service now too, training for officers. So anytime we have new officers coming on board before they hit the field, we're giving them an overview on kind of like this on what we do, just to make sure. I mean, we're a part of the culture now. I think everyone really just accepts us, and we've been able to become a pretty good team, cohesive team.
Yeah, we'd put patches on them, but then we'd have to pay them. So I'm okay with the budget.
But yeah, I mean, we'll
Just some other-
again
yeah.
do the resources. We have our case manager come in. We have a peer specialist. We're working on getting hired again, who will follow up with people, make sure that they're following the plan, accessing community resources, getting set up with outpatient services, getting whatever help we might have identified they might benefit from together. And there's a continuum. We have a variety of different connections within the community. We have our behavioral health urgent care, 24-hour service. They have a mobile response team. It's a walk-in clinic and a crisis stabilization unit, real low level of care. And we work very closely with them.
And that's who covers you whenever you're not available.
Yep.
So there's always some resource.
And where Jessica came from, we stole Jessica from over there. She was
Steal
good.
a few more.
Yeah, and so we were able to have these easy, seamless transfers within the community. We have our residential services we can help with, identifying needs for detox. We work with all the hospital systems in the local area too.
This is yours.
Okay.
So this will show the workload. 2016 is just Jesse.
So this is actually the entire
The whole
program.
county.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, yep.
Yeah. This is Larimer County. Yeah.
This is all of us: Estes Park, Loveland County Sheriff's Office, Loveland PD.
So all the services, as you can see, as they grow and the programs grow with them. Ours is here. You were the 89 though. See,
Yeah,
you're still the
you're
same.
right.
Yeah, see, you're still the 89. So 89 is just Jesse. 2016 when the program started, moved to 2017, 18, 19. We brought on Sue around 2020, 19 to 20, and you saw that shoot up. And then 21 last year. And think about 2020 and 2021 with COVID. And how it affected people being inside, and also our transient population that also does suffer from mental health issues that need to be addressed and given resources for as well. They are extremely busy as we go through that. As we move forward, this is a great slide. I'll let you take it. Yes, Catherine.
Just a point of clarification, what are these services?
They're everything. So these are any kind of context. They're going to be a call for service where we're out in the field with law enforcement. They might be one of the emails that Lieutenant Pyle mentioned that an officer sends us after they've had contact outside of our hours or if we're on another call. But the follow-up contacts with people, they're every single type of contact and intervention of the. And so, this is the outcome. We are, for the most part, able to resolve any kind of issues that we have on scene with folks. Periodically we end up in the jail, periodically in the emergency department, but we're able to avoid those pretty significant. I think we had in 2021 70 plus emergency room diversions. I can't remember the number for jail. Jail diversions too. So when people, it wasn't necessary to go to those places, we were able to keep in the community and get them some help. So I think it really speaks volumes that we're able to resolve most of these things on scene, and they don't have to go somewhere unnecessary.
So just thinking in patrol, and this is a tough slide because these are just calls that somebody calls with the mental health crisis. A lot of our calls are associated with mental health and criminal behavior, or mental health and suicides that are resulted in that, things like that. This is just the calls that officers had to respond to, only a crisis, right? On its own to help somebody through a difficult crisis at that time. In 2021, officers responded to 1,351. To give you a perspective on patrol officers working the streets that handled these calls directly, right, was anywhere between 38 and 43 officers that were responsible for handling these calls. And total mental health calls with a co-responder was 423, which meant they went on the calls together. But the officers themselves are handling nearly 4 mental health crisis calls per day, out of 93,000 calls throughout the year that group handles, 93,000. So of those, 928 were handled only by the officer. But that officer emails Jesse and his team, and the next day they follow up with those people to make sure that they're getting those services that they need. The officer was able to de-escalate it, work it out that way, or maybe they did transport them to the hospital, but they still contact them and email them and say, this person needs some follow-up, and to follow up with them as well. So really, we're only meeting about 31%. This is prior to the other 2 co-responders being added. So the city was very good and supportive in helping find those people who are difficult to find to hire to take on this job. And they have to be the right fit. So we're lucky we're at the 2 now, but there's still room beyond that as well, if you look at the numbers for it. And we need to prepare down the road that this program is growing. And I need to get you more space at the office too. So, but out of 93,000 calls, the officers handle all of them, or the majority of them, without an issue or properly, and do the follow-up with them. It's becoming an everyday thing for us. And I don't have to tell you that. You can drive through Loveland and see it, and see people in crisis every single day that are here as well.
And the thing about that data, we're working with our data analysis teams are working together to try to figure out a way to collect more reliable, consistent, accurate data, because that's incomplete. There's only 4 problem types that are very clearly have a mental health underlying component. Anything else, it has a mental health unit attached. It could be a family disturbance. It could be a verbal disturbance. It could be a BOLO, just simply be on the lookout for someone. And it might have a mental health component. Those can't be tracked right now very easily. So those numbers are significantly higher once we are able to figure out how to track those a little bit better. And so one of the great things this is becoming, we were on the spearheaded this in this area, which is very exciting. But around the country, it's becoming more commonplace as well. We've had last year, we had the 2nd National Co-Responder Conference, which brings in people from all over the United States, multiple different cities, had 300 law enforcement officers, 22 different states have these programs that were able to come, and we share ideas. We
Come here.
Operating and gain and learn from each other so that we can tweak and adapt. We are constantly adapting with this program and making changes to try to make it better. And this is one of the ways in which we do so. We're going again this year.
Yeah, and we sent 2 of our officers each year to go with that as well. Internally, we have de-escalation training. In February, we did mental health co-responder training, which was all across the board. We hired an outside agency to come in and do it. Some simple things were how to search somebody in a wheelchair and show them the respect, right? How to approach somebody in a wheelchair and where to stand so you're not blocking them or towering over them, things like that. We're trying to teach the officers to make it get down at the level, maybe eye to eye, to speak to that part of it. And then we went through scenarios from other agencies And what would you do, or what do you see? A lot of the reactions that go wrong are immediate reactions, and the message is to slow it down. Take in the information. Look for identifying marks that we've learned both in that process and from Jesse, and try and recognize to make sure it might be a mental health before it is a criminal, right? And slow the officers down. Great reception. We had great positive feedback from the officers who took it, and all were required. The whole department was required to attend of sworn capacity, plus the community service officers. We have a great peer support program with Dr. T, and we're pushing that to get the officers in there with the latest stress of what's going on. I don't know, can you guys all leave all your stress at home and go to work? And we give you a badge and a gun and deal with 4 mental health calls a day, right? So part of making sure that our people are prepared is to give them an outlet too. And the department is very supportive of that with Dr. T. CIT, we continue to do that. The only officers that aren't trained are the brand new ones, because we have to wait for a class. So all our experienced officers, probably within up to about a year, the rest of them have had it. And we're just waiting for those classes to kick up to send the rest of the people to them. The Alzheimer's awareness training we went through both last year and online. We continue to do that, and that will be in every year's training to help deal with the mental health and to educate the officers and have them slow down. 80% of ours are trained in CIT. That's because we're hiring a lot of people, and I have a lot of openings, right? So as we get people on, we have new and young people. The average people in patrol have been there 3 years now. So I'm dealing with a lot of new officers, right? So that's our presentation. We went beyond. Sorry, Steve. Went a little bit beyond our 20 minutes.
No worries.
But we'll answer any questions you have. We love the program. Hopefully you guys learned something from it tonight.
So I do have one, and then Ron, if you don't mind going after me. Perfect. Okay. So, I harped on, or I recognize something that you had mentioned in the beginning about, this is the future of law enforcement. And I love the relationship that we have going on right now. After hearing all the information that I have, it seems like we're, really trying to make an effort towards helping those going through mental health crises. And feel free to clarify, Lieutenant Pyle, but in the event that a weapon is present, of course, one of the co-responders is not supposed to show up, correct?
But they're supposed to be, if they're available,
Mhm.
we're going to be communicating before we even get.
Right.
Then we'll put them in a safe spot until we can secure that weapon.
Okay.
If we have to take them in custody and have a conversation with them when they're secured at that, we will. A couple things that is very difficult. We switched our approach to suicide or threats of suicide. Suicide is not illegal. As sad as that is for us to say, it's not illegal to do that. So in the past, they would barricade in the home, we'd bring SWAT in, and there would be an added pressure, right?
Right.
To have them be forced out of it. It would put the officers in a difficult spot, and the person that gets pressured to make a decision doesn't have the courage to do it themselves if they believe that, and they come out and they put that on the officers, right?
Mhm.
It's dangerous, and it happened all over the country.
Mhm.
We reevaluated that 4 years ago and said, we're not going to cause the jeopardy for that person to end their life.
Mhm.
So now our response is to make sure nobody else is in danger. And then we make contact or have Jesse make contact and say by phone, what are you going through?
Right.
And if somebody really says, I want to end my life, this is my decision, and hangs up, we don't have the authority to pressure them and force them to get the help they get. And that's a tough psychological thing to have to deal with, right? But we've had quite a bit of success with it.
So,
I don't want to jinx us.
yeah.
It's been the right route without having to display people and stuff.
Knocked on some wood for you.
I hear you.
So the reason why I ask though is in the event, obviously I understand if someone is having a mental health crisis and they've got an AR-15 and you guys do not want them at the front of the line. I totally understand that. But in the event of say a baseball bat or a knife, I mean, wouldn't it be good to obviously still bring the officers for protection to be able to keep I want you guys to be as safe as possible, obviously, and your comfort level is important as well. But those who might feel comfortable, or if there ever is, as this progresses, a specialist team that does these high stake kind of situations, would that be something policy wise that you guys would be able to look into, of being able to bring them to more of the forefront when those issues arise? Because I think that there still is a little bit of that intimidation factor, like you had mentioned, of someone's having a bad day and the first thing you see is a police officer. That doesn't necessarily help. Whereas if you see Jesse's bright, shining, smiley face, it might be a little bit different. And so I'm just kind of curious what your take is on that.
Yeah, I would say not a policy, because every situation is completely different, right?
Mhm.
And it depends on the information provided at the time of the call, what's coming in. If somebody's going to make a call and say that the person here is threatening us with a knife and we need you here to be there,
Mhm.
we're obligated to show up, right? If they're contained in a particular area where we can safely communicate with them, and Jesse's on shift, yeah, they're going to be there anyway. They're going to hear this going on. They're coming, right? And once we can do that and secure that, or maybe we have a phone conversation with them. A lot of time, people going through crisis won't talk on the phone,
Right.
and our only approach is to do it in person. But I can't put him in jeopardy to do that, right? So we walk this fine line. It's not a black and white book that says do it this way and it'll work itself out. And policy tends to go that way. It's a judgment call. It's a judgment call if that person's going to escape to a certain thing and there's other people in jeopardy around them, right? So the officers are trained to start open-handed, call by name, start to talk. But if they see him and they have a baseball bat, it's one thing, right?
Right.
It's still a threat. Every house has a weapon in it. What doesn't, regardless if it's a gun or not. So if we start doing a policy and start making people move in and just they're going to handle it from the front end, we're going to have some tragedies that we can't have right now. So we really have to have that team effort to do that in our approaches. I agree with you. The uniform is intimidating.
Right.
With it, our approach is a big thing on that. And if we can start on the phone and calm that down and say, hey, come on out and have a seat on the front step, and just sit there with them. And then Jesse can talk to them from a distance. We can be around the corner and develop that. That's always our approach. And we're doing that now. But if somebody has a knife, somebody has a gun, baseball bat's a tough thing because they can get on you pretty quick like that. We're always going to be there because I owe it to them and I owe it to everybody to be safe.
Right.
I also owe it to the other people.
And to piggyback off that, we were certainly there in those situations. We have been. But we defer to law enforcement if they feel like if they have history with an individual, they're aware that there's a violence risk, a lot of unknowns, we'll defer and we'll stage close by. We'll look we always protect privacy and confidentiality of anybody that we know. But if we have information related to risk and safety, if we have information on, a best approach, what's been effective with a person in the past, we'll relay that and consult and provide psychoeducation to officers if they've deemed it's not appropriate for us to be there quite yet. So we're still helping in the moment, helping before contact, helping during, and debriefing afterward for some more of that psychoeducation and overview.
Excellent.
So we've been there. You just don't hear about the ones that.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the clarification. And then I have one more quick question that I promise I'll stop hogging the mic. Just as a goal, and Jesse, this is more of a question for you. Is there a sweet spot member-wise that you guys have for the co-responder program where you want to be maybe 5-10 years from now?
I'm 40.
40?
It's hard to say. I think at this point, yeah, I would say
Double it?
Okay. There's times when I'm out in the field, on an active call for service, and I would get a call from an officer, and I'm about to say, hey, I'm not able to come. Or instead of going out, I'm consulting on the phone with them, instead of actually in person provide that in moment intervention. And so I think it's some additional overlap. So we have as a responding multiple times calls instead of having to triage. If I have
Can you bring the mic up just a little bit?
So I
Sorry.
have somebody who's talking about, if I'm talking to somebody who's, experiencing significant relationship concerns, and we have a suicide threat pop up, I don't want to have to triage and say, hey, I'm so sorry, I have to go. We need more people for that.
Excellent.
Yeah. 24/7, be able to take those extra couple hours in the morning where we do get a lot of calls still and be able to help.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. Ron and then Jessica. Yes.
What is the incidence of drug involvement? And distinguishing between whether it's a mental health issue and whether it's drug involvement?
Very, very high.
Same.
There's a lot of comorbidity for sure, where you have both overlap with mental health diagnoses and substance use disorders. So I see that very frequently. And you're 100% right. Trying to differentiate what is going on in just a brief snapshot of time is really difficult. We have records, we do our reports, so we have information on past contacts, we have information in our system that we can't always share with law enforcement, but we can use it to inform our treatment and make sure that we're giving people the best services. Alcohol and other substances are very prevalent.
Jessica?
Thank you, Chair Pryor, and thank you for your presentation. A couple questions. First, I want to say thank you for your work. I support mental health. I absolutely support community safety, and I appreciate all the efforts that are being made towards that in our community. So thank you very much. I have a little bit of experience as a interviewer and documentarian, writer, etc. I've had the opportunity to interview probably 40 to 50 first responders throughout the state of Colorado. And I have a deep respect and empathy for what you go through when you approach difficult situations. That being said, I have a question. A couple of meetings ago, we were talking about, is Commissioner Vick here today? No.
Yes.
He is. I think Commissioner Vick, did you mention that Summit Stone is only available to respond until 8:45 p.m.? Is that true?
Couldn't remember the time. It's just the incident that you guys were talking about started at 9:45 p.m. and they're usually not there by then. Usually
Okay,
gone.
so I just wanted to, that's the part one of two. Is that true that like 8:45 p.m. is the cutoff for?
So currently, and Jessica's finishing up onboarding, so she'll be available soon for those evening hours. Currently, our hours are 9 to 7:30. And there are we go to morning briefings periodically. So we come in at 7:30, leave an hour and a half earlier as well. We're a reactive job. We don't get to plan sessions with people, the amount of time that we have. So we run over pretty frequently. And when that happens, we might flex hours throughout the day. Like if I work 12 hours a day, I might have to start an hour later the next 2 days to be able to sort of balance that out. And additionally, we have to write reports just like law enforcement does for all of our contacts so that we can draw upon that as a resource in case we have future contact with folks. So we go out of service, depending on how busy the day was, hour to 2 hours beforehand so that we can finish documentation, coordination of care, email outpatient treatment providers, email intake team to make sure that they're getting set up with services. Our technical hours are 9 to 7:30 with some fluctuation based on need, if that helps.
It does help. Thank you very much.
We will have up until midnight. We'll have overlap. Jessica and her counterpart on the other side of the week will be working from 2 to 12:30 at night with similar sort of fluctuation.
Thank you. I mean, I understand, obviously, everyone's only human, right? You need time to do things and to rest and recoup. I would like to think that moving forward with such a robust co-responder program that our city or county or community would be able to fund more people to be able to ensure that, you don't have to work yourself into the ground and become burned out in order for there to be a mental health co-responder available whenever. I just a gut instinct, but I imagine a lot of mental health crises happen between 9 p.m. and 7 a.m. The other question, and this is a really difficult one, and I'm sorry to pitch this to you right now, but I think it's, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. What happened with the Alex Domina case? Like what didn't work there?
I don't know that what we can talk about because of pending stuff going on with that. That's a big case with a lot of things still involved with it. And we can't talk specifically about that. What I will tell you is everyone takes it to heart what happens, right? Very much so. And I think there will come a time where we can talk more. It just isn't right now. But I understand the question.
And I believe the city attorney has a clarification.
Chair Pryor, I was just hoping you would remind the commission that they are not to ask about cases that are heading toward active litigation.
Roger that. Thank you.
Sure, and I'm not trying to talk about litigation. This is like a human question. So thank you for your answer, and I thank you for your time.
All right. And then is it to piggyback off of what she's talking about, Mike? Okay, I'll add you. Patty?
Like to think that when incidences arise and maybe the outcome is not what the police department or anyone would hope, that maybe there's something done like in a debriefing form that your partners are brought into that and you play that back and talk about it as far as what maybe could be done differently and better going forward. Did that make sense?
Yes, and that happens. Every critical incident is debriefed with the people involved, and anyone who would have influence on how to learn from that situation, we take into account. We adjust our training to account for that, but we also open the discussion to get the different perspectives of what could happen and what could happen. So what I'm telling you is, you all know law enforcement is a dynamic situation that happens quickly. But when it's over with, we all have to armchair quarterback and look at what we're doing. And that does take place at the police department on every incident, including the most recent ones. Those groups are brought together to look at what could be done better, what should have been done, what we missed, or what we did properly and correctly as well on both sides of that. So yes, debriefs are a part of every incident.
Okay. And I just, as far as like Jesse, your relationship to the police officers, are you in a position that if you maybe see an officer who repeatedly is acting too aggressively or seems to be having some crisis on their own, are you in a position to intervene for that officer?
To intervene for that officer in what way?
For them to get recognizing it, but then to see that maybe they are given some help and even a follow-up to see if they are responding to that help.
With the officer. So we don't provide any sort of counseling, clinical services for law enforcement. That's what our peer support group, Dr. T, that's what they provide.
Okay.
I mean, certainly if I see anything that would be unsafe for the community, I'm going to speak up. I'm not going to not say something simply because I have relationships with the officers. If I have something that's concerned, it's my duty to talk about that. And, you know, if on a smaller scale, and similar to your first question, you know, we debrief after every call. There's no perfect intervention. It's rare that we have something that goes exactly how we want it. And so we'll talk about it. If we notice there's a low fuse for one call, we'll talk about it, see what was kind of triggering with it, maybe talk about a different approach. So we do it on a small scale in that way after most calls. And if there was something really, truly concerning to me, I would speak up.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Mike.
I just have a couple of questions. One is, I was just curious, you went over quick on this, hoping you could clarify towards the end, kind of how you define mental illness. I mean, you indicated that, I mean, so the reason why I'm asking is I think probably a good amount of calls the police department get are for things like domestic violence, things like that. And at what point, you know, how do you classify something as being kind of a mental health call? I mean, things, you know, obviously people in stressful situations.
Sure. And I mean, I'm a crisis counselor. I'm a crisis interventionist. And so, what I was talking about earlier, I mean, there's certainly in our diagnostic book, there's set diagnoses with a variety of criteria that has to be met to meet that diagnosis. We don't have to have a diagnosis to meet with someone. If someone's having a hard day, there's significant distress going on for them, and it can be from anything. It can be from relationship concerns, it can be grief and loss, it can be trauma, anxiety, depression, financial stress, right? Housing insecurity. That people are going through hard times and might not have an effective way of dealing with that. And sometimes those things, even if it's not meeting full diagnostic criteria, sometimes those things are part of what contributes to their contact with law enforcement. So we try to address them whatever they are.
But at some point you have to classify. You have defined a certain number of calls as having.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
For statistical purposes, at what point, where's that line?
Yeah, and I hear what you're saying. That makes sense. And the data portion and being able to have reliable data along those lines is kind of what you're driving at. That is something we continue to work at and something we certainly take into consideration. That's why it's those numbers we were talking on there. There's only 4 specific problem types. I think it's suicide attempt, suicide threat, mental health, and one other. There's only several that actually go to those numbers that Lieutenant Pyle talked about. All the rest of them are ones that have had a mental health unit attached to where we've identified some kind of a behavioral health concern. So that's kind of how we're able to delineate there, but it's certainly a work in progress.
Follow up to that question too. You had made a comment earlier that a lot, in many instances, you're familiar with some of the people. But how from a 911 call, an emergency call, how you're able to gather enough information prior to kind of make that assessment and to be able to advise. I mean, is that just through the skill of your dispatch, or is that?
Yes, and it's, I mean, our dispatchers are great. We rely on them daily. But I mean, we have to be skilled jugglers, and that's a part of what we're doing. I know where to look in my system, on my electronic medical records. I know where to look quickly in order to determine if there's any concerns. We have access to our computers in the field. So if I'm staged waiting for somebody, I can access that and review it quickly. If I'm not able to do that, we can call our behavioral health urgent care, and they'll look someone up for us, give us relevant diagnostic information, past crisis interventions, things like that. We can call providers. I've talked to providers en route. I talk to family, friends, collaterals. If I have that information, I'll put them on Bluetooth and make a call and do some screening on the way.
We have a lot of repeat people that continuously go through crisis over and over, and experience and knowledge together lets him do that, right? To have it with him, because it's just been him and Sue. So a lot of our repeat people that have continuous crisis problems, they're familiar with them, or they recognize the name, or they had a follow-up or a call on them, and they can go to those notes fast. That's the benefit of having them in-house and not at another station or anything.
One last quick question, I'll be done, Jordan. One of the things, I mean, and maybe it's because I'm in the statistical look. I mean, you indicated, if from your statistics, there's a big leap, and you had indicated, Officer Pyle, that after coming out of COVID, you've just observed wonderfully that a lot more cases that are occurring. I mean, and I'm just was curious if that's if it's a function of having additional staff that you're able to kind of report it, or do we have a kind of a crisis in society at large of mental health, or is it just we're just better at dealing with it now than we were 5 years ago? And I know that's it's maybe not a question you can necessarily answer, but I just was curious about your opinion of that.
More staff, better data collection techniques, better ways of analyzing the data that we have. I'd say those are the main things that are contributing to that leap. We were able to get to free me back up in the field. We had a manager that was able to start, take away some of the extra duties I might have been doing before, which got me back out in the field and saw an increase in contacts. Our numbers, though, month to month between my coworker and I stay steady, which tells me we're at capacity for what we're able to do. So we're certainly nonstop working and need more help. But we're getting there. I don't know if does that answer your question, sir?
I think the question kind of goes about, do we have a national crisis when it comes to mental health? And I would say yes. Some of the changes in the law have helped contributed to that. You know, we had a lot of drug law changes that allows it to be more. We're seeing more drug activity and alcohol, which is combining to that mental health crisis out there. But I'm telling you, officer working the street, that we are seeing more based solely on experience. I think it, and that's why I say it's the future of law enforcement, because yes, I think we need more resources and things to move along to and see that in the future, both within law enforcement and outside of it. I think this needs to be the forefront of the future for every community. So yeah, I think we are on a crisis for that. There's a lot of people in need. You saw how many we're getting to with just the mental health responders, and there's a lot more beyond that.
All right, so I have, Lori, yours was a follow-up question, correct? Okay.
You mentioned that, this is Commissioner Ward, you mentioned that if you have a call that you can go to one of the facilities that might have treated them previously. And do you not run into a confidentiality problem with that? I'm just wondering if that's a problem for you.
Of course, it can be, but you know, part of under HIPAA for coordination of care between providers in a crisis situation where there's risk involved, you're able to consult and talk with each other to share relevant information related to that risk and safety. And I'm the same way. I will never share information. It's all minimal necessary information. So I'm not going to share anything that's not related to that risk and safety. We protect people's privacy.
Great, thanks.
Perfect. And then I have 3 more in our queue. Jonna, you had a question, correct?
No, I'm good.
Okay. All right, then Shane and Natalie to finish this off.
Mine was just more of a follow-up. So what Commissioner Schneider was talking about was an incident on February 12th. So if you could just give a quick brief difference between the SWAT team negotiations group and a co-responder group. That was what the discussion was about.
So the SWAT team brings in mental health help to help identify mental health crises and give those negotiators information that would be helpful to get them to communicate with them. So yes, we have multiple people on the team. Our team works in particular situations recently with Fort Collins and LCSO that also have that doctor available on the scene at that time, giving real-time advice and real-time information for those incidents. Yes.
Okay. Natalie? Yes, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add you, Catherine, and you as well, Tara, just because I feel bad for skipping you guys. Okay. Okay.
Okay, this is a total change of direction. You had talked at the very beginning about working with other folks in terms of referring them for practical sorts of things. So is one of those places you might refer, is that like Homeward Alliance?
Yes. Our case manager is great. She has extensive knowledge of local community resources.
Great.
If she doesn't, she's going to research it and find something. So yes, we might do, our neighbor, we do disabled resources, we'll do 137 connections. We work with firms appropriately.
That's great. Thank you.
Tara? And now you got 2.
So one question was, if you have someone in your house or in your care that's having a mental health crisis, when you make the 911 call, do you need to specify for a co-responder if that's what you're looking for?
You can. You absolutely can request a co-responders. They get those requests and say, hey, I think a co-responder could help with that. And as long as we can make contact for that and we know the people are safe, or they'll get transferred to the co-responders voicemail so that they can follow up with them and give them that connection. If it's an immediate threat that needs addressed at that time and the dispatcher feels the safety of the person that's calling is in jeopardy, we're going to at least make that contact to make sure it's safe for that person making the call. But you can certainly call and just ask to speak with a co-responder or have a co-responder call you back. If the co-responder feels that it's safe for them to go on their own, they will. And it's up to them to make that judgment.
And I'd certainly recommend it. We have several fail safes in place, right? You know, we're listening to the radio, we're monitoring the dispatch system. We have our dispatchers who can recognize and ask us to tag along. We have patrol sergeants who are listening to see if there's some kind of a behavioral health concern and ask us to get attached. And we have officers who are recognizing these and asking us as well. The final fail safe is the one you're talking about. I do recommend to family, friends, anyone else who's calling in, yourself, whoever it might be, to ask for a mental health unit as well. That will at least give you that extra sort of safeguard to make sure that the officers are reaching out to us right away so that we can respond as fast as possible. So certainly recommend that.
Okay.
If it's a time that a mental health unit isn't available, we have talked with dispatch and law enforcement, we have the mobile assessment team.
That's my next question, yeah. So I was like, what's the difference? And which, so this is backing up, because it is to that. When you call like a therapist or Summit Stone or whatever, they always have on the recording, if it's a crisis, call 911. But when do you call the mobile unit? Because that's 24/7.
And if you'll come up and speak to the mic. Well, it's the people online. Yeah.
The difference in co-response and mobile. Co-response is dispatched through the dispatch system. So calling it a non-emergent 911, that's how you get a mental health unit, through co-response. Mobile is dispatched through either the state crisis line or through the Summit Stone crisis line. So you could call Summit Stone. Option 4 is we'll get you to the 24-hour crisis. So that's at the Riverside location. That phone is answered 24 hours a day by a clinician. Mobile can respond 24 hours a day. So we do give law enforcement, sometimes the co-responders like to take vacations or whatnot. And so we do say law enforcement or people can call 911. Dispatch has called mobile to dispatch out if people are busy until we get more co-responders.
That was my.
And then Aaron, did that answer your follow-up question? No? Okay.
Really quick.
And then Natalie.
You mentioned that 8 co-responders in Loveland would be a nice number a nice goal. How many peer specialists and case managers will go with that 8 co-responder unit? So in the city's strategic planning and LPD, we can account for that in the budget.
Sure, and I defer to Suzanne on that, but I can give you anecdotally what I think would be helpful. We're with the double workload, with the doubled amount of referrals that would be coming in, we would need double that amount of help as our case managers provide follow-up, or peer specialists provide follow-up support when there's not a significant clinical need for us as counselors to do so ourselves. So they're doing all the follow-up work, they're doing in-depth coordination of care within the community, and we do that. We have to follow up with people within 72 hours of each contact. And so the more referrals that we end up getting, the more contacts that we end up getting, and with wanting to make sure we're giving people a timely response, we need people to be able to do that. So, and
I think maybe
8 numbers.
yeah, I don't have.
Because right now we have one case manager. That's all right. I should just stay up here. Right now with the co-response program, we have one case manager and one peer for 7 co-responders for all of Summit Stone. So right now we have one case manager that goes between Larimer County, Loveland, and occasionally Estes Park. So ideally, if we increase the number of co-responders, then I would love to see 2 dedicated case managers and 2 dedicated peers within Loveland. Is more what I was looking at.
Yeah, and that would give them the ability to come out with us sometimes too, as opposed to just making follow-up phone calls, and it'd free them up for that as well.
Okay, and then to take us home, Natalie Walsh.
Thank you for the folks on here who suggested that you guys come and talk to us. And thank you guys for coming. And thanks to the LPD for being open to sharing its space with mental health service providers or whatever the title is. I think you're preaching to the choir right here. I think you should ask for more. There's ways of looking at, there's like law enforcement for like crime. And then what I would call like compliance assistance, maybe, where there's so many people that are, button up to violate law, but they don't know it, or they don't know how to deal with it, or they don't even know how to deal with the world. And so it always seemed a little heavy-handed, and like not really law enforcement. It's kind of just doesn't even sound right. So I really like what you guys are doing, and I think it should be, expanded because I don't know how these numbers fit within the other numbers of like hard crime where you need a gun and stuff for. But, it's a lot of calls that are unassisted, that 900, whatever, that's a 1,000th of a percent of the how the numbers work out. But anyway, thank you for the presentation. And if you could help us build a budget insert maybe. And I would not be shy. I think there's a lot of support with shaking it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And we will work on that then for you.
All right. That wasn't really much of a question, but I like the response though. You have one more? Yes, Catherine. Last question, and then we have to move on to the next agenda item.
So while you have a magic wand, our job is to make recommendations to the city for what is going to establish trust in this and reestablish trust that has been suffering. You have a magic wand. What do you need?
No, it's a tough one. I mean, it's a really tough question. There's a lot of areas I think we have need.
And well, yeah, I was just gonna say, if you think of something, please let us know, because I think that even from day one of us being together as a commission, that was one of the things that we were talking about, was trying to get more mental health professionals to be able to help out in this area. So budget, whatever you guys need, whatever support you guys need, let us know, because yes, we would love to add. I don't want to speak for everyone, but I personally would love to add this to our list of recommendations, and I think others would as well.
Thank you. I mean, I have a list of many things. A route to go is
okay.
I will.
Yeah, so you can give us our finance team to be able to submit a proposal.
Okay. And then do you guys have a preferred contact method or a card that we can take or something like that? Okay. Perfect. Thank you. Okay. Excellent. All right. Well, we appreciate you guys for the presentation and for your time. And with that, that takes us to our second presentation of the evening, which I believe that we actually have a change in speaker for this. It's going to be Isabel William. Is that correct? William? With no S. Oh. G. William. Got it. My bad.
Hi, my name's Isabel William and I lead the CARES department at Thompson Valley EMS. I'm here tonight with Chief Lesher and Chief Robinson. It's super passionate to me, this program, super proud to be part of it. So CARES became part of the Colorado Senate Bill 16069. And the primary goal was to reduce numbers of 911 calls going into the emergency department. That was its primary goal. I think we've been pretty successful in that. We also, as we grew the program, we saw this immense need in the community that we didn't really know existed until we started delving a little bit more into it. So the program, it relates to the health and well-being of people in Thompson Valley community. The primary goal was originally to be part of the community, be active in the community, and work with people that frequent the 911 system. Within that, we'd offer health education, low-cost prescriptions, and alternative resources to using that 911 system. I also work super closely with community resources like Summit Stone, the Banner UC Health Facilities, their primary care physicians, their social workers, Meals on Wheels, you name a community resource and we'll utilize them. As the program evolved, we saw a need for all those things, but just sometimes to be an advocate for these people. I kind of look at myself as a middleman. So we have, we have Summit Stone, we have the emergency departments, we have the paramedics, but sometimes connecting people between those things is a challenge. For example, the emergency department, we might have somebody who frequents the emergency system through our 911 system. They're given resources, but they're never followed up with truly in the community. Sometimes that person just needs a little bit of help navigating the healthcare system, navigating where to go, who to call. It's a tough call. And so sometimes I'm just the advocate, and we really recognize the need. The Colorado Senate bill has pretty strict guidelines of what we can and can't do. Anybody I help has to have been in Thompson Valley EMS's 911 system. We have to have had contact with them from a paramedic. We don't always have to have transported them, but we've had to make that contact. Our crews, our paramedics are so aware of the need. They are amazing at referring people to me. So they'll identify a need, they'll discuss it with whoever they're on scene with, they'll offer my resources, and then follow up and send me that report through. I also get referred a lot from the area hospitals, primary care physicians, anybody that they know has been frequent with Thompson Valley EMS. They will ask me to reach out. What do they need? Sometimes people are going to a doctor's office and may not be 100% open and above what their real needs are in the community. I am unbiased on any of this. So I'm just there primarily to help with whatever they need. We have a lot of frequent EMS users. My job is sometimes we can't avoid it, but to be a support network for them, to find out what they need. Sometimes it can be super simple as far as they just don't know how to navigate making that primary care doctor appointment or even finding a primary care doctor. And so they're utilizing 911 EMS to get into the ED for primary care situations. We also have people that, going through transitional phases in life, primarily our seniors. That's the biggest demographic of people that I primarily help on a daily basis. We have many people that are in that transition stage. They maybe need to make decisions for family members or themselves as far as what they need in the home. Do they need home health care? Are they looking at, looking at assisted livings? We can definitely start those conversations. The Senate bill is also strict about who we cannot talk to in the program. Obviously, we can't talk to a client that's violent towards EMS crew. At that point, I'm referring probably out to Summit Stone to look at behavioral health issues. We don't integrate ourselves with somebody that doesn't want help. If they say, no, I'm not interested, that's fine. We're always there if they change their mind. We can't refer or speak to anybody that's not been in our 911 system. So, your neighbor who, might need some help with resources, but we've never seen on the 911 side, I cannot have that conversation. I can't go door to door. I can't advertise who we are as far as, I'm a community resource. Again, all falls back to that 911 contact. What we can do, as discussed, we can discuss some transitional life stages. It's probably our biggest resource is people having to make that tough decision for family members, or just accepting that they may need that extra help in the home. It's the biggest one. I would say about 75% of our calls. Low-cost medication programs. I work with some community pharmacies who help to make things easier. They'll do home deliveries. They will do the pill packets to make it easier. And so, as I just gather resources as I go along, and I can refer all these things out to people in the community. We're also always looking for alternatives to the 911 system. Primary care probably being the first one. Sometimes it's Summit Stone. Sometimes it's just food insecurity, a place to live, somewhere to be warm for the evening. Work down with 137, and other organizations that help facilitate Northern Colorado Health Alliance, work with, some of our population that struggle with things like that. And So I'm the middleman, is basically. We can't duplicate any other services that are in the community. So I can't counsel somebody. I can't be a co-responder. I can't do any of those things. I just am in the middle as the middleman. We can't, under the CARES program, do anything more than vital signs. Periodically, we will send a captain out instead of an EMS unit on somebody we may have some concerns about. They can do some vital signs, assess what needs are there, and either request an EMS crew, or it can then come back to me. And we also can't have any relationships with anybody in a resource that we provide to clients unless it's disclosed. So most of our collaborating agencies are people that you've spoke to this evening, Summit Stone. Sometimes we team up and we'll head out on calls together, especially when, along with a mental health concern, we're also dealing with things like not being able to access primary care or Meals on Wheels or identifying needs in the home. Collaborating it's the best thing in Loveland. My time here has been the community getting together and helping these people, as far as these resources that are willing to talk every day about people, has been phenomenal. We have approximately 200 active CARES clients right now in our program. There's consistent growth of about 20 to 25 referrals each month. And we find definitive care solutions for about 25 to 30. Those definitive care solutions can be full-time placement in an assisted living, home health care that is set up and running in the home, finding a primary care physician so they no longer need the emergency department, Meals on Wheels. All those things are a definitive care to where the patient no longer is entering the 911 system on a consistent basis. So this graph, it's just a month. I just threw it in there as just a little bit of information based on February of 22. Primarily, if you look at the third box down, I know the writing's really small, but falls are one of our #1 EMS calls that we go out on. We're not running on the mental health calls like Summit Stone are, certainly, part of what our EMS community do, but not primarily what we do. And so those falls are really important to identify those needs of how can we keep somebody safe in the home. Most people want to stay in their home as long as they possibly can. And so identifying those needs and offering resources so that person can be safe and secure in their own home is super relevant. And so that's our biggest demographic. Between September the 1st, 21 and March the 1st of 22, 176 clients received help from the CARES program that resulted in them no longer needing 911 services. Now, I will tell you from the January of this year, we've really ramped up on the resource side as far as identifying those needs a little bit more specifically. But in that time frame, we made 445 CARES calls. 235 clients were referred to the program by our paramedics and other community resources. And that's it. I'm sorry it's not as long as those guys that talked on.
No, you're fine. And just real quick before we start questions, I just know that this group can be a little long-winded at times. So I do want to go ahead and move that we extend the meeting until 9, so an additional 30 minutes.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second. All right, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, that was 11, so yes. Okay, cool. It's been extended until 9 p.m. Excellent. So now if you guys have questions. Oh, sure thing. Yes.
Being the chief of the department that Isabel's talking about, and I get to orchestrate these things, and Isabel's done a real good job of talking to you folks. But for the Trust Commission's piece to this, our goal is to take a handful of people in the community and keep them out of these guys' shop. So it's pre-co-responder time. If we can do that, and there's a lot of folks, especially during COVID, who have reached a point that they may be in your shop and they shouldn't be. So we're not robust. We don't have any grants. Everything's being paid for by the Thompson Valley Health Services District, which we have a board that has decided that this is an important piece to the community and can reduce some of the stress on the 911 system. As she does her job, our calls drop a little, which means we don't have to put more paramedics on the street, which means everybody saves $1 or $2. If you want to look at it from a dollar standpoint, which everybody has to look at it from a dollar standpoint. It's an allocation of resources. We want to make sure that the amount of paramedics that we have in the street are doing paramedicine, and the amount of other resources which we have around the community that are robust as you can get for any community are getting together enough that these people are taken care of. We have a saying at the office that if you find a turtle on a fence post, somebody probably put it there. Well, we would like to be the group that put the turtle there. It needs help. Whether it's turtle or whether it's person, it's just a way of getting through to everybody that find a way to help. And so ours is a precursor to these folks. So for the Trust Commission to understand, and with the police department situation, we're going out a lot more with the local law enforcement than we did before. And we're very happy about that. That way we get to help them decide if there's a medical problem, mental problem, or a law enforcement problem. And together, we're going to reduce the stress in the community. And I think that's what it's all about. So sorry, I had to jump in there. I told Isabel I wouldn't talk unless you had any questions. So I lied to her already. But our relationship with the police department is very good in this regard. I think they can jump in at any time if there's anything that steps out.
So you had actually made a point about saving dollars, and while that has been mentioned to us even as a commission that we need to save dollars, I think more so even it saves people time, and I think that that's so important because we have such limited amount of people. So I have a question that either which one of you can answer. Are there instances where, because you'd mentioned that you're not a robust organization or body, excuse me, but are there times where there's just too much going on and you guys aren't able to reach some of these, and so some of these are being deflected to our co-responder program or to LPD?
Well, our goal is to be there before.
Right, but
So,
yeah.
Anybody that reaches that point is, as Isabel said, there's a certain group we're not going to deal with.
Mhm.
You know, we do follow the state rules, even though we're a health services district, we could eke into a lot of other things, but our goal was never to do that. One of the things we told ourselves from the very beginning was do not duplicate something that somebody else is already doing, because it seems like that's why we're in the problem that we're in. So if it's mental health, we're moving this direction.
Gotcha.
So ours is more coming off of the paramedics in the field, finding somebody who's having a struggle surviving in this community.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
They won't notice it. If they don't know their names, and that's the goal.
Thank you. Natalie?
Hi, so it's Commissioner Walsh. Thank you very much. I didn't understand exactly where your funding comes from, because I'm going to ask you guys the same question. Do you need more?
Well, there's nobody that would stand up here and tell you they wouldn't take any money. Honestly, our first focus when this came up years ago, when we were working with the Colorado Department of Health as to one of their first CARES programs, and I think one of the only ones left, there may be one other one. We were looking at the overall picture of the community and what it took for us to cover this community. If I put another ambulance on the street because the volume gets too high, it's a little over $1 million a year to do that. If we looked at our stats and we saw some people calling us 77 times, which was one of them in just a couple of months, if we could help that person, we've done a couple of things. One, we've helped the person. That's our main goal. And if we ever lose sight of that, then we should probably go somewhere else and do something else, because there's lots of jobs out there, I heard. But the overall goal was, if we could reduce that stress on the system, we're not paying that $1 million. So if it costs me $250,000 to run this operation, which is approximately what it's doing right now, I've actually saved $750,000, right? I mean, that's backwards math, but that's how I do it. So the goal of the operation was twofold. It was to help them and help us. And so far it's doing that. But in the end, I think we've helped the police department a tiny bit because we've reduced a bit of stress on that 911 system. And we've reduced a bit of stress because the law enforcement guys are going to end up out there. If the 911 system's getting stressed all the time, somebody's got to go talk to these people. And it'll end up being one of these police officers who already has enough to do. So we're trying to stop that. So it's a cycle and we're all involved in it. And if we all do just a tiny bit, probably going to bust that cycle. And for Loveland, I don't see why we can't, because we have everything we need to make it work. We just got to put the puzzle pieces together. And I think we're doing that right now.
Thank you. Catherine?
Hi, Commissioner Barrett. Thank you so much for presenting. And I've lived here for 12 years and I have never heard of you. And I could have used you probably 5 times. How do we advertise your group? How do we get your name in front of people? What is being done now? What more needs to be done?
That's a key point. We don't. The reasoning is the Senate bill. All of our referrals are coming from these folks or our paramedics. Now, that doesn't mean word of mouth doesn't get out there. And in Loveland, that's pretty cool. It does get out there. And well, you probably already know that. I'm probably preaching, somebody said something about preaching to the choir. Well, we're singing right now. So we kind of have to be careful about the volume. So the folks that we're helping, our paramedics, turn in these reports and then we review them all to make sure that it's a person that we can call, go out there and try to work with. And once we get them placed somewhere, especially if it's an assisted living, a mental health condition where we've turned it over to these folks. But the key problem in the community becomes that heavy user in the 911 system. And if we can find them, and I'll tell you another area of concern is the local veterans have had a struggle, a big struggle in this community, and they deserve a little bit better. I don't know if I can help them all, but we have a big veterans clinic opening up in Loveland, which I understand there's going to be some closures of some other ones. So our veteran community is going to start focusing on Loveland. And so now they've become our people. So we need to get out there and try to help them. But that all comes from the referrals that we get. If we opened it up and just put a phone number out there and said, call, I don't think, well, you guys can't handle what you're doing, right? Well, you can't. I'm not saying you can't. I'm saying you need more help. But we'd get overwhelmed. So what we're trying to do is get those referrals from the paramedics as they go out, find somebody that's a failure to thrive in the community, pick them up, help them get to that next step and reduce that 10 to 20 911 calls that'll come in for one address in a week or 2.
So just a quick follow-up. Is there a county resource or something that is similar to what you do that does advertise and provides?
I think Laramie County Office on Aging is probably the biggest one.
If you'll talk into the microphone, I apologize.
The Laramie County Office on Aging is probably the biggest one for the majority of the people that I serve. They have a lot of the resources available.
All right, Tara?
So I was wondering, when you were saying that the falls were kind of one of the big calls that you end up on, is there like with one of the fixes or one of the resources that you like to use for that demographic, is there like a certain fix that is really hard or like challenging to get to those people specifically? Or
I think one of the main things, a lot of these people are Medicare or Medicaid. And I have a really close relationship with the Medicaid, Medicare social workers in Thompson Valley's district. I will identify a need and we'll look, captains too will identify what would they really need? Is it grab bars? Is it, heightened seats, shower chairs? And then I will refer back to the Medicaid social worker who will get it ordered and installed. So again, kind of that middleman.
And on that note, when we run our numbers, we do about 6 to 8 falls a day. Now, not all of them are elderly, obviously, and not all of them, some of them are caused by something such as a medical condition. But our goal is to get into the home, try to prevent that fall ahead of time for some of these people. But you know, you talked about the drug and alcohol situation in the community that can cause a fall. You know, so there's a lot of things that come into play with that. But if we could reduce those by 3, think about it over a year. But it also keeps them out of the facilities too, which, you know, the goal is to help people. Anything we can do to keep them from being a part of the system is what the goal of this program is. So it's not fancy, it's not robust, but I think she's helped a ton of people, and that's my goal.
Commissioner Black.
Thank you so much. Are there any services that we don't have that you wish we did?
Kind of falls into the mental health, so I won't encroach on that too much. But I think for me, we have a lot of substance abuse, or primarily in my role, it's alcohol, the detox. We have a couple of agencies here in Loveland, and you can probably elaborate a little bit more on this, but you know, we can get them to detox, they're out within 3 days, and then, you know, the cycle kind of keeps repeating. So I wish there was more of a robust option for addictions.
So I know right now, I think, so detox should be part of this new behavioral health facility out by on Trilby that should be 2023-ish, right? So is that going to be helpful, do you think?
Absolutely. And I obviously, a lot of these situations I'm referring to Summit Stone anyway. I'm not handling that kind of thing on my own, but I am dealing with family members have, you know, their children have addictions or a partner have addictions, and sometimes I'm just their support network. So it'd be nice to, you know, kind of have more options in a community that, you know, people can get access to.
Yes, Patty. You can use my mic. There you go. It's nice and loud for you.
Very good, thank you. And I know you had said that, you know, you have restrictions as far as how you can participate. Do you work with like social services, like adult protection and places, things that the county has that's already in place?
I probably speak to services about twice a week on cases. We tag team. They're obviously dealing with, you know, the more severe cases, but sometimes there's just a need in the home, whether it's, you know, access to prescriptions or primary care or getting mental health. Same kind of issues that I deal with normally that I'll tag team. Yes.
Very good.
Any more questions from the group?
I would like to tell you that the program did expand during COVID, and it's something that was never in the news, and I would like to have it in the news because I'm awful proud of the group. First off, during the lockdown, we were probably the only folks that went into somebody's house, besides Officer Pilot here probably went in with us a few times, but we're not gonna share anything with that. Whereas most things were locked down and done by phone. We felt that this program needed to get into these homes so they had a net. Also, just recently during the governor's order, emergency order, we were allowed by the National Guard to do antibody treatments at homes. And we did do that. It was very quiet. It was very restricted on who we were able, who was able to give us information on it. So for a community effort, the folks were overwhelmingly at work. And so there's a lot of antibodies being put out there in homes. And the other piece of that was the goal was to make sure all of our first responders in the Thompson Valley Health Services District were able to go back to work. So it was quietly done with all of the first responders. And I feel like maybe the world ought to know how well everybody did in that regard. And so I'm going to use this forum to tell you that.
Thank you. So, okay, then I have a, yes, Jesse.
No question, just I wanted to express appreciation for you all, a great community partner, great partner agency. CARES has been wonderful to collaborate with Isabel, and particularly not just the program, the people behind it. Chief Lesser has been great advocates for our community in general, and just wanted to express that appreciation for him.
Thank you. But I do have a note written down. Again, I'm not going to speak on behalf of the group, but I don't see why we can't at least discuss there being some sort of recognition, excuse me, for our first responders, especially for those who, probably worked tirelessly during COVID. So thank you guys. We appreciate y'all. You have one last question? We have one last question. Sorry. False alarm.
This for the co-responder program. Thank you. Do you think it would be helpful for this community to have a listening session, an open listening session to learn more about this program?
Yeah, I think our biggest problem is communication, right? And that the amount of information that you've learned in these meetings, and I was here for the blue team meeting as well, is that you really have no idea what we're doing. Our policies, I appreciate, Natalie's on my committee, Jordan. I see Aaron, you got a lot of work going on. And I appreciate that. You got to be part of the solutions that are coming. And I think the communication is a huge thing for that. So yeah, I think along with just the co-responder program, but we need to teach the community what we're doing and we need to improve our communication on that. And that's a big part of it. So yes.
I agree. I think visibility, transparency is important. And so it goes back to a little bit about what you were saying earlier, Catherine. How do we get people to know about you? I run into folks all the time who don't know what we do or have a misunderstanding of what our function is. And so I think it could be helpful not only to educate the public, but also to educate and adapt our program ourselves. We can learn, just like our co-responder conference, learn from the community what the needs are and see if we can fit that, and meet that need too.
All right. So thank you so much to our presenters today. That takes us to our last agenda item, which is going to be planning for next week, or not next week's meeting, but our next meeting. So we do have our report to council. What was that? Oh, yes. Y'all don't have to sit here and listen to this part. This is the boring part. Thank you so much. And if you guys do have cards, if you guys could bring them to Jeffrey, that'd be appreciated. Thank you. Yes.
One of the things that came to my mind as we heard all these presentations is whether we might want to suggest to City Council that we do another one of those. September is First Responder Month. And how we do that. Anyway, that's just.
Yeah, that could work with the recognizing the first responders that we had written down. And I do know that Jeffrey is keeping a running list of a very long running list of recommendations at this point, which is good. So yeah, I'm going to pass a couple of these down. But yes, so for next meeting, I know that we're going to need to start getting prepared for the presentation. So I didn't know if we wanted to do a mock presentation and go through slides as a group so we can all agree on the information that's being shared to council. So then that way I'm not necessarily speaking on behalf of the group. That too. I do like not getting beat up. I'm open to any suggestions. I would love to hear from you guys as to kind of what we want to do. 26th. Let me double check. It's a Tuesday. It is the 26th. Yeah. Yes, it's going to be virtual. I heard an Everyone's checking their calendars now. Yes, Ron?
We're going to take a few minutes to go over the website. Is that right? After
Yes,
this.
yeah. We just need to pick a time and a day to all take pictures, but
Jordan,
yes.
not sure how to say this. I don't think that there are people on council who are very sincere about wanting to hear what we have to say. So I don't think that it's appropriate at this point to make recommendations. I think that we need to communicate the goals that we have determined as a group. These are our goals. And then just ask them. This is how we would like to move forward. What do you think?
The open-endedness of that, maybe not so much, but I do think that we need to go goals first versus recommendations. Yes. You looked like you had a comment, Natalie.
No, I was just gonna say, I think that we should really stick to the ordinance in our decision, to focus on the things that we've been focusing on. And the ordinance is for ours to interpret. So I think that we got in trouble last time because I agree with your observation of there some insincerity. And what we learned from the last presentation was that I think the city council actually really did want to withdraw our charter, but they didn't have the courage to do that. And so what they did is they started kind of peppering with a lot of suggestions, like we should look into all these various things that frankly are just Steve's job, and he's doing them. So it's like, I'm sure they're, the potholes or whatever department is. And I think they were trying to kind of like come up with something other than what we were doing. And that was just so discouraging in the sense that I really do think everyone here is hearing it. And we show up every Monday, every other Monday, 2 Mondays a week, and we do our homework during the week. And they might not like hearing what some of us say, and I'm sure I have other people they don't like hearing what I say. But then just remove me from the commission or close the commission down, but don't say you guys should look into potholes. And that's why I'm worried. If we ask them, what do you think? They're going to tell us, and we're going to hear that we should look at the potholes. And I think we don't want to look at the potholes. We want to kind of answer the issues that people have raised. We had discussed, doing LPD, and we got around some of the corners of LPD, but we're not really going to be able to finish that until the city's comfortable talking about any of these cases. I really don't know what to do about that.
And we are doing the one thing that they did recommend, which we are working towards getting more community input and potentially, according to our goals, looking at a different avenue as well while working on the LPD stuff. Yes, Catherine.
The what we keep coming up against in this group is finding out what should have happened. We're all much better versed on knowing what should have happened during these high profile cases. And the word that I keep coming back to over and over again is accountability. The more we learn what should have happened, the more we learn that it didn't happen and that we have to hold people accountable. The more we learn about sunshine laws, the more we learn that there have been breaches. There has to be accountability. How do we go before a body that is breaching sunshine law and say, this is something that we recommend you stop doing without getting drummed out?
Tough.
So,
yes, Mike.
So I'm going to kind of follow up to what Commissioner Walsh said. I do think it's in our best interest to focus on, center ourselves around what the ordinance says and what we've done related to what the ordinance says. I do think, there are issues, and people brought up issues with emails and different things. But again, I mean, it's not, we can't be the kind of the police of everything, I guess, within the city. I think we have to stay focused on what we're asked for. And I don't want to sound like I'm diminishing some of those other elements, but because I'm not, but I want to focus on what we're here for. And I think one of the problems or the challenges that I have with what we're doing is there's just significant amount of information that's not been made available to us. And I think, and that's really at the heart of the accountability piece, to say, okay, we recognize that something happened. We recognize that people see it as something that was negative overall for the community. You know, 2 officers, or I'm not sure, the charges were filed, but you know, the question I have is what happened between the incident that occurred and the time it came out in the paper, and what occurred throughout the leadership. I mean, was it something that you know, I mean, was it an isolated incident, or was there something that occurred, or that somebody knew something? You know, I don't like using conspiracy in big terms, so I'm not. But what I want to know is who knew what, when, what did they do, how did they address it, and was it appropriate? And to make a decision about, you know, that accountability question, and be able to do it in a public, transparent, open manner. And I think we're up against, you know, not being able to, the court documents that I think at the last meeting we had asked for, now we realize they can't because there's another appeal. And I'm, you know, and I don't want to kind of go back down that rabbit hole, but, you know, at a certain point, I think I'm just not sure if we're not, you know, what more we can do as a body until some of that information is made available to us. And quite frankly, I don't want to keep coming back every 2 weeks just to kind of talk, to get information. I mean, it's great. I think it's wonderful what Summit Stone does and what the other groups do. But if that's going to be the extent of our meeting for the next 4 months or 5 months, however long till September, then I'm going to resign from the committee. I mean, I'm going to resign and wish you all the best of luck, because, you know, I don't necessarily think that's a good use of our time or the community's time. And I have some ideas. You know, I think that at a certain point, I'd like to understand when some of that information is going to be made available. And maybe we look at kind of what our own operations until such time as that information is going to be made available. And you know, and maybe if we could get that, we could complete our work. But I just want to kind of throw that out there for discussion. And
So, yes, wait, was there a motion there? No. Sorry, I heard a second and I was like, did I miss something? Yes, give me just a second. I do want to just follow up on what Mike said as well. And that something, to be transparent with you guys about where I'm at with all of this. There have been times where I have felt that this group is completely pointless, and it's nothing to you guys. And I appreciate the fact that you all come here every Monday, or every other Monday rather. And a lot of us don't want to be here, but we're doing it for the sake of our community. And I'm in the same boat of, there are just so many blockers, so many things that are keeping us from trying to truly get answers and obtain the information needed to make the right recommendations.
Maybe that's our report. That's the problem. We're kind of going, what are we going to report on? Maybe that's our report.
So it could be one of the, yes. And it maybe for the next meeting, that's solely what we work on. It's just, I think that this discussion is great, but I think that this discussion is going to be a lot longer than 30 minutes worth of time. Thank you for the list. And oops, there's one more on there. But yeah, maybe this is what we discuss next meeting, is this for an hour and a half, because that's really the amount of time that we need to truly talk about this from the top down of what are the true issues that are stopping us from doing what we need to do in order to make the difference that we are trying to do. And so I'll quit hogging the mic because I know that we have some other folks who have some things to add in as well, but maybe just something to think about for the next meeting. Commissioner Vic. I have Vic, Barrett, and then Aaron. And I'll add you, Catherine, Merlin, Ron. Keep those hands up for me, please.
Because I had to miss the last meeting, not on my own choice, so I get 2 meetings worth of time. So I partly agree with Commissioner Barrett, but our thing says to present quarterly updates. So all we have to do is update, and this is actually probably the best meeting to do that, since it's virtual, to be able to say, this is what we're working on, here's what we're waiting on, here's what we're doing. Period. Thank you for your time, and be short and sweet, because it's not an in-person, type thing. I think short, sweet, that point, so we can have a big discussion to put to that. But the other thing to kind of tie into also Commissioner Scholl is that I'm looking at the big picture. So the Loveland PD is a big picture that we all know, where we've already discussed this. We've kicked this horse. We're not going to get the answers to those questions until everything is done, the appeals process, and it legally can be released to everybody. So here's the other questions I have as a commissioner. Why can't we pass to get a North Chilson Recreation Center in the city of Loveland? Why is the water bills going up so high? Why? There's a whole other gamut of stuff that the citizens look at us, or not at us, at the city and go, we're not passing that. So why? I mean, if we're gonna value our time, and we probably should dive in a little bit, which would probably make us look a little better, especially after the last city council, right? That was one of their things. It was like, hey, we got to look into this, because I was in a process today where we talked about the Transportation Advisory Board. And some of the things on a slide from their meeting last month triggered me to go, yeah, these are things that as a trust commission, why can't this happen? Why are we not passing this? It can't just be about money. It can't just be about, I born and raised here. I can't think that an age group population is just sitting on their front porch, no to everything. There's got to be a reason. And that reason is a trust. Do the people really trust the city of Loveland? And it's hard to put that in perspective when you get weekly emails about this commissioner or not commissioner, this city council, that city council, this is going on, that's going on. I mean, if there's going to be a body, in my opinion, that doesn't have any other connections to any other politics, we should be politic free and be able to go, okay, y'all need to get your poop in the group. Y'all need to stop, right? We got a city to build. We have things to do. Yeah.
One of the, several months ago, we had asked City Manager Adams to come before us, and those are the kind of things that were on my question, like, what do you, what's going on? What are the problems? We're not, that's like the definition of his job. So, but he was reluctant to come and talk to us about that. So we tried other ways of getting information about other things from people, and, there were some polls and whatever. So I understand what you're saying. And while I probably am not interested in doing that, because I really do think that's the city manager's job, I would be willing to at least participate in the conversation with the city manager to find out all, the topics that you're talking about, and what other problems exist in the city, because literally that's his job. And he knows the answer to that. So I don't want to keep playing 21 questions with everything and trying to, define something in the negative when sitting right here, all the answers is right here. That's why there are liaisons.
Right.
So I'm totally open to it, but if you can help me understand how we're going to identify these other categories without having the opportunity to interview the city manager and the city attorney, please enlighten me, because I don't
hoping, I'm really hoping, and maybe I'm naive in my hope. I'm really hoping that this Let's Talk Loveland page and some of these things that we reach out, we're going to start hopefully hearing more. I think we got to present it more broad than just the police department. I'm not saying we shouldn't do the police department. I'm not saying like what you said. When we get all those answers, Commissioner Ward brought that up. Like, we just want to know where the ball was dropped, because once that gets discovered, if it's our commission that gets to go, hey, this is the problem, they're going to fix it. I'm hoping those other things come up. If my very naive view is that there's, I'm just gonna throw a number, 60 people who are the loudest people and it's all about this incident, I think, my personal opinion, we've kind of done a disservice to the entire community. I'm not saying that these are high level things that need to talk about, but there's a whole other level of people out there that are like, why can't they repair the pothole in my street? Why can't they repair this? Well, but that's one man.
So hold on, I'm gonna reel the conversation back in real quick. Again, I think that this is a conversation that's, yes, it's gonna take a whole meeting to talk about all these different aspects. So with that, Commissioner Barrett, you're next on the list.
And real quickly, Let's Talk Loveland does ask those things. They're all about what's going on in Loveland that's bothering you. Talk about it here. They have constant comments about, some of them are just horrendous. The comments that they make, stop killing our dogs is the one that comes to mind. And when we talked to Nicole Yost, what we talked about was, when you get an inflammatory comment like that, you have to respond to it. You have to say, tragically, this happened and this is why, and blah, blah, blah. Shut down the comments, that you're not inviting comments after that, but address these issues. We're being asked, I believe, to help Loveland citizens who have lost their faith in our city government to have that faith restored. We can't do that by ignoring the elephants in the room. We can't do that by focusing on potholes, in my opinion.
I'm not saying ignore it. There's nothing we can do with it.
Well, there is, though. We can, I believe we can use the, like you said, the Let's Talk Loveland to find out if it is 6,000 people who are concerned about those cases, or if it's just the 60.
So again, I appreciate the back and forth. You guys, we are running out of time. I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to be that guy today. Did you have a separate question aside from the Let's Talk Loveland stuff about the agenda? Okay. Yes. Yeah, Jeffrey has that. Okay, then with that, Aaron.
I want to go back to Officer Ash in the litigation that he has out with the city of Loveland right now. And I guess I would like some clarification from city attorney as to why that is connected to the Karen Gardner incident and why that's being attached as an appeal with that case, when from my understanding, that was an action that person took after the fact. And I think that's a wrongful termination case, but you can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm just wondering why that is attached to the Karen Gardner. Why are we waiting on that? That's a separate litigation piece as far as I'm concerned.
City attorney.
Commissioner Black, the Karen Garner Internal Affairs Investigation Report is tied to to this matter. And yes, one did occur after the other, but it's interrelated. So some of the allegations in the complaint about conduct by Officer Ash relate directly to what was happening in the Karen Gardner case, even if it was after the fact. It's all tied together. Under the statute, the internal affairs investigation is not complete until all disciplinary action related to that complaint is complete. So it's not releasable under state law until the process is complete. The process is complete when all appeals are exhausted.
I appreciate that. I still don't understand the connection.
And I'm not sure if I can provide more than that.
Thank you.
All right, Catherine Bullard.
Okay. I think that we heard in public comment tonight some really serious stuff about accountability in our city council. And I think that a comment that was made may be right, that if we go there, we'll be done. And here's two thoughts on that. Let's go there. and if they want to say we're done, hell no, we're not done. We can still meet, and it doesn't have to be twice a month. We can do that. But either so that's two things. I mean, but using other language, do we have the balls to do that? I know the minister said that, whether or not, what a deal. But do that, and also not let things go. Don't let it go.
I mean, I hear exactly what you're saying. Do we? That's the real question. Do we?
It is.
Yes.
I'm just gonna take a little bit of an issue with that. I mean, I think it, I think once we kind of wade into that, we become part of the problem. Once we get away from the facts of it and we focus on the politics, we wade into the politics. And if that's the case, I mean, if the commission's decision is to go start talking about open sunshine, I mean, it was in the court, it was on the front page of the newspaper. It's the purview of the city attorney and the city manager. I hope that they would take the judge's comments quite seriously and take some steps to address that with city council. But I think ultimately, until we can get through the first part of the ordinance, which is the Karen Garner case, I think that, I'm cautious about wading into anything new. I mean, if we can't even answer the first question, why are we going on to the second one? And I think I just on a really base personal level, these core wars drive me absolutely crazy. Because every pouring, and I get it, and I'm not excusing some of the, I'm not excusing. Actually, my name was in some of the
Same
text messages. When I was a city staff person, which I cares. I mean, it was pretty benign, but I think that's the decision for the mayor and her people want to file court requests in the court and the city attorney. I'd say let them deal with it through that process, because you can't legislate for behavior, and that's the core. I mean, and so I think I just want to focus on what it is we were here for, and what I was, why I care about the community. And I want to, and if I can just indulge me for 15 more seconds. The one thing I take issue with is when we discuss, what happened, it's not whether 60 people kind of are affected in the comment or 6,000 people come. It's the fact that we had a situation where a negative incident occurred that was broadcast around the entire country, probably North America. That I had family back east that were saying, what the hell is wrong with your community? That there was an action that occurred that clearly was not appropriate, that to the extent that you had police officers that were criminally charged. And I think it was a real stain on our community, to the fact to the tune of somewhere in the north of $3 million that we're paying, which I think affects everything else we do in the community. And so I think it is bigger than that. And I think we owe it to ourselves as a community to cast a bright light on it and understand and make sure that it never happens again, and that people that are in power are held accountable. And so I'm just gonna say for the record, if we want to go off on kind of rabbit trails and trace down emails and text messages, then you can meet to your every day of the week. I'm just gonna choose to not be part of it. So, and I'll end with that. So thank you.
So with that, I'm going to pull a Jeffrey here. So what I'm hearing is for the next meeting, we need to discuss plan as well as our council briefing. Those should be our two items, unless there's anything just absolutely outstanding. Our plan, yeah, which will probably take up the bulk of the time. But with that, I have 4 more people that we need to get through before 9 o'clock. Also, Merlin, you are next, but just real quick, I think probably the easiest thing to do for this picture thing, because that's on the back of my mind, because I'm like, how are we going to fit this in time? Would everyone just be able to show up 20 minutes early and we can just take it out at the steps out here?
Sure. Perfect.
No?
I barely get here at 6:30.
Okay.
Large picture.
I do.
Yeah.
At 6:30.
Yeah. Well, there are people that are missing here today, but maybe for the next meeting, we all just ensure that we're all going to be here and we just take it here.
What about next Monday?
I believe I have something next Monday as well. So I know that we want to have the lake, but at the end of the day, I think us just having a profile is top priority. And then if we have time where we can be like, oh, let's have a lake day and go get it done. I know. Well, time out. Let's bring it back in. So we'll plan to take the picture at our next meeting. Just make it super easy. So those of you guys who are listening, if you are able to, please come in person. Jessica, I understand if you cannot, I will Photoshop your face.
Picture of the lake or something to.
Yes, we can have all kinds of pretty stuff to go with it.
I would move to authorize you to take a picture of it.
Yeah. So with that, Merlin, you were next.
I just want to make a small comment. I agree completely with Mike. This commission was not put together to try to wrangle in the council members or whatever's going on else in the city. We were made to do one job. And that's the job we're supposed to be doing. Now, if we can't get all the information about the Karen Gardner thing, big deal. Let's just move on to try and build trust in the community. That's all we were hired to do. And that's all I got to say.
All right, thank you. And you were hired, I volunteered. Yeah. How much are they paying you, man? Sorry, I had to give you a hard time for it. Ron. Surprised you.
I think that just 2 quick things. One about before I forget them, which happens more frequently now. In terms of the presentation, I think that we need to focus on the fact that perception is reality. And communications and accountability are the 2 biggest pillars that I've seen that impact trust. And I think that when I look at what all the community meetings that are going on, that the police department has organized, I think, wow, they're doing a lot of the stuff that I thought maybe we'd be doing. So I think that we ought to recognize that a lot of the things that we had hoped to eventually do are happening now. We don't have to take credit for it, but I think we need to recognize that those are really good things, and that is increasing our ability to increase trust. And I'm assuming that we're not going to spend time on the paragraph that Catherine is working on for the Loveland thing. I submitted some comments, and I just wanted to make sure that you understood that I believe that if we made the language more neutral and less looking like a complaint forum, kind of putting, you want to give us some good news, give us some good news. was the gist of my comments. I'm done for the night.
And I appreciate that. And yes, even if it's something that we haven't necessarily done as a group, I think it's important for us to recognize it because, I think that might actually put more trust in the police department than, oh, wow, a commission had to tell them what to do versus they did it on their own. So I get where you're coming from. Tara and then Sarah.
Okay, I'll try to be fast. So I had two things. One was about the DUI enforcement show. Anyways, I wasn't sure who wrote that, like if it was the police chief or the city manager or whoever got together to decide that they were going to make that statement about actual DUI accidents and then put the victim's mother up. Because I felt like the actual problem is that innocent people are being charged with DUI, and then the fallout of having a DUI for an average citizen is immense. And so it brought me kind of to where Mike is at right now, where I was like, I don't think we're accomplishing anything. And I think the only way to actually accomplish anything with the citizens in this community would be for us to educate the community on their rights and powers within the community. Because I feel like the city and the LPD are going to do what they're going to do. And we can make all sorts of recommendations. But I feel like if we educated the community on like, this is your right. And if you get pulled over for a DUI, if you do this, this is the path you go down. If you do this, this is the path you go down. Like, I feel like giving the power to the community, educating them, like, and this is, our LPD is here to enforce laws. They're not necessarily here to service us. And so I think that would actually repair trust because then everybody would be looking at the cops as like, this is what we expect out of you. We don't expect this out of you, but we do expect this. So then when we interact, we're at the same level. So that's kind of after hearing the press release and knowing how all of this has gone down for 5 months now, I think really we've been focusing our energy in the wrong place. We should be focused on the community.
So you're saying
giving
bridging
them
trust from the
power.
other side. Fair enough. Wonderfully said. And then Sarah, and then we'll end with you, Catherine. Sarah?
Hi. Can you guys hear me okay? Is that all right? Maybe. Nope.
Yes, we can hear you. Sorry.
Okay, that's okay. I was just like, okay. So I just wanted to bring up that we do have that survey that we can do through our new page. And so that's something that everyone should be thinking about so we can come up with questions because that will be good to bring to council that we've, made some more progress.
Sorry, was that it or did you cut out? I couldn't quite tell.
Yeah, that's all I have. Just to think about the survey and if there's anything that people want to have included in the Let's Talk Loveland survey to let us know so that we can start working with Nicole to build it.
Yes, the official Let's Talk Loveland survey, not the Jordan tried too hard to go above and beyond survey. And then last comment question goes to Catherine Bullard.
I was just going to say there may be another item to talk about next week, but I don't know that yet.
Okay, well, okay. And with that, I'm going to give you 2 minutes of your night back. This meeting is adjourned.